done all the dirty work for you. These are the 2026 fashion trends worth knowing about. There are a lot of trends that walked the catwalks that we've just had, spring, summer 2026, and I've whittled it down. Okay, I'm not going to tell you about all the boring ones, the ones not worth knowing about. Yes, florals for spring. They're in. That's the end of that sentence. I'm talking to you about the ones worth knowing. I've got 9 of the biggest fashion trends that we are going to be seeing a lot of, and I've also got 4 sort of micro trends that I think will be bubbling up, that I think are going to have a bit of a presence as the year goes on. Guys, if you are new here, my name is Cassie and I'm a self-diagnosed luxury addict. I put out videos on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. So if you like luxury fashion, then you're probably gonna love it here. So head on there, subscribe, turn on the bell, become a member of our luxury addicted family. When are we going to rehab? Never. I also have a Substack, in case you're interested. That will be linked below. Let's kick it off with the big one, feathers. Spring Summer 2026 has more feathers in it than an aviary. If you are not walking around with a plumage and a feather in your cap, as it were, then you are, I'm sorry, you're out of trend. No, I'm joking. Feathers are everywhere. It seems very random to me, especially because feathers to me feel very delicate. It feels like something that is very high maintenance, maybe something that also doesn't have physical longevity. Like, nobody is going, oh yes, that's a hard-wearing feather jacket. Exactly. But, as usual, we're seeing the designers interpret this in different ways, from much feather to a little bit of feather to some interpretations of what a feather is. If we start off with a brand like Valentino, they kind of focused on feathers at the collar level. So some of them were sort of very sparingly, just like maybe 6 feathers around a collar kind of situation all standing up. Or they also had like feathers trimming the collar of a dress. And then there was also this sort of feather-like detail that was strewn across the front of a dress. Obviously, one of the this look is going to go down in history with Mathieu Blazy's debut at Chanel, the closing look. This was a very simple silk t-shirt paired with a gargantuan feather ball gown. There were so many feathers on that it looked like a rug. And obviously you can see with the way that she moves, how the feathers move and they have a life of their own and all of that. Givenchy sort of used feathers in a way that might somehow mimic fireworks. That's the only way. Or like dandelion heads. Yes. Okay, something like that. So a few of these kind of like sets came down with just these isolated pops of feathers on a look, but there were also the shoes that came down with this look that were meant to be floral, right, loads of petals. The way that was sort of constructed with so many petals also looks kind of feather-like. Then you had a brand like Gucci, obviously new Gucci under Demna, and one of the looks of the characters that he presented was this sort of very quintessentially dramatic feather-trimmed robe. Stella McCartney presented feathers, but as we know, Stella McCartney is a vegan brand, as she herself is vegan, and they debuted something called the Feathers with a V, and they are plant-based feathers, constructed feathers that look just like the real thing, actually. So again, many feather pieces in her collection. Dior had a pair of shoes that came down the runway just like a pump, and the front of the pump looks like one big feather that's sort of coming up the top of the shoe there. There's something about that style as well that feels kind of like Louis XIV, like click-clacking around Versace, something like that. Victoria Beckham as well had these tops, very simple kind of tank tops and dresses that had sort of full feathers like laid across them, sewed on, whatever it is, to kind of create, again, almost like a balding feathered look. Not in a bad way, but that's how she was doing it. There is going to be no shortage of feathers in 2026. Get your feather boas out, shimmy yourselves, and you'll automatically be on trend. Let's move into a bag trend. This is quite a controversial bag trend, and I'm calling this thief-friendly bags. Yes, a number of bags walked down the catwalk that were hanging open, okay, inviting unwanted and possibly curious hands into the belongings of the bag. Now, it wasn't just one brand that did this. There were quite a number of brands that did something very similar. However, don't worry, no need to clutch your pearls. A lot of these bags, minus possibly one, are manufactured so that they do have a closure system. This is just how they look or how they were styled down the runway. Dior is launching the Seagal bag. This is one of Jonathan Anderson's new bags for Dior. I would sort of call this his Lady Dior, right? It's a very kind of like structured top handle, very ladylike feminine bag. It's got this sort of folding on the front, you know, closed with a bow. It's very pretty. However, it has the one top handle. I assume there's also going to be a longer crossbody or shoulder strap, but only attached to the back of the bag. There are not two handles, one on each side for symmetry. No, if you are OCD and you like symmetry, don't even bother with this category of bags. And the front panel of the bag is lower, right? So it does give that illusion of it's open. There is a flap that closes everything underneath, so actually it's not open. But the thing with this that I would be interested to see in real life is how does this balance out? Because if you put stuff in this, is it hanging at such like an annoying, crazy angle so that it's just like hitting you in the thigh as you walk? I've got questions. Totem styled their bags kind of like open in this sort of like, oh, she's a woman on the go, she's busy, she's got places to be and things to do. And also, lest we forget, many a Birkin and a Kelly are styled open because they are an arduous task to close. And so a lot of women just keep them close and keep them flaps open. Loewe also did a sort of like new version of the Amazona bag. Again, this is a very kind of like soft, user-friendly, everyday-ish sort of bag, but one handle on the back. There actually does seem to be another handle that maybe makes it into more of like a shoulder strap situation. However, only again on the back. It does zip to close, you're going to be fine. But again, I just worry about the physics of it all. How is that hanging? Has it been weighted out so that it actually is going to still fall somewhat flat? I've got questions for this. Fendi's Peekaboo bags were kind of styled open. This is a bag that's been very classic to the brand for many, many years. And they sort of did that because the interiors of the bags were very over embellished or had this like great beading, and obviously it was to put it on show. Again, there are questions about if there were the interiors like fully sequined, how does that make any logistical sense for everybody ferreting inside? And what, you go and you get your AirPods and you come out with a bunch of sequins and now the inside of your peekaboo is bald. I don't think they're going to do that. I think that it will only be sequined on one side. So only one side is unusable. Anyway, we have yet to see. But again, the peekaboos do close. They have a turn lock closure. You just don't see all the fun stuff on the inside. And then the brand that maybe did it the most controversially is Chanel, because also we are still yet to confirm whether this bag actually does close, or is it just styled in this sort of like crumpled reissue way and it's open and that's the vibe, and you either get the vibe or sod off. I'll be in the latter. What I do suspect they might do with this bag, I feel like with some of the bags they are going to leave it like that. It's going to be very structured open and this is it and it's a limited edition thing. I think that they might make a soft version of it where it does close but it still sort of looks like skew whiff. Let's see. This is a fun trend. This is summer brights. Now you might think that, oh, well, you know, spring, summer, going into those sorts of seasons, I know, it seems far away at the moment. It's always about colour. It's always about, you know, those fun pops. Well, the recent collections for spring, summer haven't been showing us that. It's all been a little bit sort of like neutrals, very toned down colours. So this season it is bright, it is bold, and there's a lot of clashing, there's a lot of colour blocking. If you look at a brand like Versace, that whole collection was colour block central, very 80s. Keep that in your mind because we're coming back to another very 80s trend later on in this video. Sometimes it can even feel quite garish. Dries Van Noten, they already do colour, they do it very well. This was done in like these really rich silks, so the colour even feels even more bright and glossy and in your face, paired with like, you know, black contrasting embroidery and things like that, or these like really bold sort of surfer-ish patterns. You then had a brand like Loewe that it was just like a child had poured out a colouring box and that is what, you know, walked the runway. You know, we're seeing this in different ways. We're seeing it in these like really great floral pops. Celine did a couple of these looks, but also Celine later on in that collection did these sorts of really, you know, richly coloured tops paired with neutrals that it kind of balances itself out a bit. Or if you look at a brand like Chloe, they again did florals, but a little bit toned down. It didn't feel as bright as some of the other brands that I've spoken about. Then let's talk about shoe trend. This is a trend, you know what, I've got to get over it, okay? Apparently this is just a staple of spring summer dressing now. Jelly shoes slash PVC shoes. We don't seem to learn our lesson, okay? Every time I talk about trends, what's worth investing in, what's not, blah, 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 and I was like, PVC shoes, we always regret it. I'm the one that always falls for it. Why? Because they look juicy and gummy and I want to eat them. However, in practice, they're eating me, okay? That PVC is eating my flesh. So, looks like I've got to get over myself because this silly little trend is back. Chloe this year had a very successful pair of jelly shoes, and it seems like next year they're going to have a good pair as well. These ones are sort of Polly Pockety looking. The way that the jelly, the plastic, has been done is it sort of like mimics this ruching at the front that you would think, well, I'm sure I had a pair of Disney princess shoes to click-clack around the house in when I was about 4 that looked exactly like this. Probably a little bit more durable too, but anyway. So they've done that. Simone Rocha has just done entirely PVC shoes, and with and without embellishments. There's clog versions as well, so there's something for everybody. We are also just seeing sort of elements of PVC in shoes. If you look at a brand like Valentino, they did these kind of like, it's a pump with very high sides, right? So it almost looks caged in all the way down to the toe, and then you just have a little strip of PVC connecting those two sides together. Interesting. Loewe have also come out with a pair of shoes that, I don't know, I have an inkling are going to do decently well. How could I describe this? It's almost like it's almost like a shoe that I assume the Pied Piper would have worn. It's sort of Peter Pan and, you know, a sort of pixie in the woods would wear. Plasticized. They have clear versions and opaque versions in different colours that will be coming with a couple of socks so that you can interchange the colours underneath and really play about with that questionable little shoe you've got there. Whether a little or a lot, jelly shoes and PVC is not going anywhere, and keep your eyes open because there's going to be much more choice coming for us. Fringe. Similar to feathers, this sort of like drama, these sorts of elements added to clothes that bring a movement or, you know, add just a va-va-voom touch to a look are very, very present throughout a lot of these collections. But again, we're seeing a brand like Alaïa do it in socks. Sorry, fringed socks. So the fringe is at the top. And the way that this fringe was just swish-swashing like a car wash as the models walked, like a very chic car wash, was just really interesting to me. Are you a fan? Are you a fan or no? I think she was a fan. Just added an element of like, it was very unexpected. It's like, I'm not used to seeing any movement at this level of the body. How interesting. Burberry added sort of leather fringe to leather trench coats that they did. Quickly dipping back to Alaïa, they also added these like tassels that look like they live at the bottom of a curtain sort of thing. They added those onto the hem of a skirt. So you had sort of tassels draping down. They also have a pair of shoes where the lace-up ends in these tassels as well. Speaking of fringe tassels, even probably the most expensive Lady Dior bag that is going to be released soon is the Lady Dior that Jonathan Anderson has designed in collaboration with Sheila Hicks, who is an artist, and she does a lot of this sort of like tassel work. But it is fully adorned and it'll set you back in the 40,000 range. I'm sure that they're numbered and whatever, it's in collaboration with an artist and all of that. It is a piece of art. Then you had a brand like Area come down with this like tassel monster of just sort of glittered fabulousness. And Bottega Veneta, Louise Trotter's debut for the house, had these absolutely incredible fringe pieces, and the way that they'd done the density of it, they'd really packed them, it almost looked like fur at times, the way that it walked. So lots of different kinds of fringe, it's happening. And you can see that we're using fringe now in like very casual aspects, like on bags, on something very durable like a leather jacket, all the way to something much more eventy. Lingerie, the sheer/transparent trend that has been sort of like, it's been in the background for the last few years. It's really been sort of evolving slightly as each season goes on, and this time we're very much down the like a lacy, negligee, definitely down like the lacy, almost like dark romantic route. Autumn winter 2025, a big trend is this sort of like dark romance. So that is definitely continuing into spring summer 2026. One way that I really enjoyed seeing this was at Dries. They had these like patterned sheer maxi skirts paired with an opaque top. And I liked that kind of balance of the trend. I think that a lot of times it can seem like, well, it's all this or nothing, you know, it's a lace bodysuit or everything's opaque. So I like this sort of balance of the two. Dior also had this sort of like negligee looking dress that had a kind of tent sculpture underneath it that gave, yes, a very sculptural aspect to this otherwise, you know, kind of like sexy-ish looking dress. Acne Studios had a few of these like lace, it was almost like a collage of lace dress that was definitely looked like it was inspired by negligees and lingerie, but it had much more structure to it, so it felt like a proper dress kind of thing, and not like you'd sort of decided to rework an old nightie of yours. McQueen did less sheer, but again, speaking to the lingerie side, more corseting. So these kind of like lace-up corset-like unraveling details as part of trousers or skirts or tops. And in some cases, the lingerie was just on show by way of extremely, extremely low-cut bottoms. And also, Hermes, this brand kind of shocked me to get involved in the lingerie-ish kind of story here, because you would never associate the two. But Hermes did a lot of these kind of like under-breast harnesses that sort of feel very kind of like bondagey, which again, like, I'm like, oh, Hermes, I didn't know you knew what that meant. But anyway, so you're seeing it kind of in that way of almost like another accessory to add to a look, another kind of element that feels very unexpected, exaggerated silhouettes. This again, you know, I told you we were feeling very 80s earlier on in this video. This also feels very 80s. I'm talking about ginormous proportions of details, huge bows on a white shirt, or the biggest shoulder pads you ever did see, or like over-the-top ruffles and volume and just taking up space, all of which Saint Laurent did very, very well. So they started off their collection with these like the crispiest white shirts with the biggest pussy bows attached that were just sort of like at different levels as well. There was like a low-cut one as well. Then obviously they've been doing this kind of like 80s silhouette, this very V-shaped massive shoulder pad, designs for a few collections now, and it's definitely pulling through. But then it culminated in these almost like taffetery, I really hope they're taffeta, these like absolutely massive, princessy, but very kind of like almost sort of maybe even Edwardian-y kind of dresses that just, there was so much in these rich jewel tones that just swish-swashed as the models walked. And it was just volume, and it was delicious if you ask me. Balenciaga also paired these voluminous ball gown skirts with like little crop tops. Again, you have that sort of like something dressy with something quite casual. Roxander, talk about a lapel. Huge massive collars and lapels on coats. They also had this like incredible hooded cape moment. Again, it's the drama, and I'm excited to see more of these dramatic elements coming back into fashion. Matière Fécale, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, also did this dress that looked feather-like, okay, tying back in, but was made completely out of tulle. It was very sort of like ballerina-y, and the skirt again shot out massively from the very sort of like tight design of the top. Let's go back to another bag trend. Frame bags. I'm talking about bags that have that sort of like little, they feel oldie worldy, they feel sort of like very vintage, they've got that metal trim 9 times out of 10 and a kiss lock closure. You know, it feels very much like a full stop at the end of a sentence. It feels very much like, thank you very much, goodbye. Drama, again, look at this for us. Lots of brands are doing frame bags. Chanel had this sort of like white bag that was, it almost looked like the Chanel makeup bags, white bag with the black trim, that had the frame element at the top of it that just, you know, it's just going to have a great sound when it closes. Coach, obviously, their Kiss Lock clutch bag has been doing particularly well, and they are carrying on this sort of like Kiss Lock element into a couple of bags from Spring Summer 2026, one of which is like a round shoulder bag, and the other one is a hobo bag. And again, almost like the pocket of these bags has that closure. By the way, the little shoulder bag already sold out. They did like a little drop on the day it came out. It'll be restocked and everything, but as we know, Coach has been killing it when it comes to the bags. Hermes, not exactly the same, but that kind of like metal structure, metal frame element. They've done this in a spherical little mini bag that I thought was very cute and had to talk to you about. And then also Bottega have the Laurent clutch, which has been around, but you have that frame element. It's all wrapped in leather that again has that closure. So like these kind of clutches with a frame element, those sorts of things we're going to see more of. Flip-flops, again, it sounds obvious. You know, it sounds like the jelly shoe that I can't quite get over. That like, yeah, flip-flops, of course, it's spring summer. They are really going balls to the wall with the flip-flops for spring summer 2026. We are seeing it in every way, from like a fabric PVC mix from Alaïa to a platform velvet version at Valentino, I lie, at Balenciaga. And then Chloe did this really interesting pair that almost looks like it has a bumper. It has like this trim that goes all the way around, which like, let's hope that, you know, it really accommodates all toe lengths there. Now, those are the massive trends that we'll be seeing a lot of. Here now, I want to talk about these little micro-y trends that are bubbling up. The first of which is military jackets. And I'm excited to talk about this because I love military jackets, that kind of Napoleon, this sort of embroidery or whatever that goes straight down the front, most likely has a technical name. I don't know it. Let me know if you do know it in the comments. But McQueen was doing this in a number of ways, all from like different sort of levels of ornate. You know, you have sort of typical with the gold embroidery. You had like an all navy one that had these incredible shoulders with the tassel detail. A brand like Kenzo also did it kind of printed, so you don't have any of the embroidery, but again, you do get this kind of like, it's the trompe-l'oeil of it all, of it looking like it has that. That went down the runway. And then Jenna Ortega wore an incredible top that it basically looks like a military jacket with the arms chopped off of it to attend the show. And it's beautiful. And I love that she did it with a denim skirt, because as much as I hate a denim skirt, it looked great. Statement costume jewellery, the bigger the better. Saint Laurent had these absolute gargantuan earrings coming down the runway that you're like, how do those even stay in the ear holes? Even if it's a clip, gravity is going to eventually take its toll. However, I do believe it actually has like a hook, so it fits onto the back of the ear, and then it might also clip on and then drop. So, you know, your weight is really being distributed there. They are phenomenal. I love these. Yeah, you're not surprised. I love the drama. I love these statement pieces. Valentino also had these like golden, a little bit more sort of like sculptural sort of pieces that like, they literally just cascaded down. They also had like matching necklaces as well. Givenchy has been doing these like really huge chunky gems that have like a silver setting around them. They feel kind of like edgy and not too precious, maybe like the Saint Laurent ones feel. And they were necklaces and earrings and maybe even a contraption that looked like it was maybe 2. And then a harness as well. Jenna Ortega, again, wore autumn winter's version recently for, I think it was a Wednesday premiere thing. Either way, they're clearly continuing that on, and it just added so much to the looks that went down the runway. And again, it's nice to see these elements of inspiration so that we can play with our things or get the stuff out that's been collecting dust. Odd one here. I know that we're really interested in east-west bags. Okay, they're long like this, usually shoulder bags. Why am I seeing a couple of bags being carried north-south? Is this the evolution? Louis Vuitton wore the Dop kit, which is a toiletry bag. A few models carried that down like it was a little top handle moment down the runway. And then I also noticed a couple of Bottega bags carried that way as well. So this is just something for us to keep our eyes open for. And finally, silk scarves. Silk scarves used as accessories, obviously, but also as tops. Hermes paired those harnesses that I mentioned to you earlier with these sorts of scarf moments. Again, this is something that we DIY a lot in the spring summer, so it's interesting to see brands show it that way down the runway. Celine had these really great tops that I'm obsessed with, and they seem to be styled with the scarf sort of going across the shoulders like this tied, and then you have this sort of train of, you know, the tail of the scarf getting tangled in the wind there, adding a little bit of drama. You also have a brand like Cal Meyer. This is a sort of upcoming New York based brand that did the silk tops as well in a very similar style to you know, what many people like to do in the summer, you know, worn as a sort of halter situation. So again, there's lots of inspiration to be had for spring summer. Let me know if any of these trends inspired you or got you excited. Let me know which ones didn't. I'm going to leave a link to another video over here in case you haven't already seen it. Have an amazing morning, afternoon or evening wherever you are. And in the words of my father,
if you've enjoyed it, tell your friends. If you haven't, keep your mouth shut.
I'll see you in my next video. Mwah. Bye guys.